Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of the Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. After he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears. Then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, "Ephphatha," which means, "be opened." At this the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. People were overwhelmed with amazement. "He has done everything well," they said. "He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak."
In today's world, where information spreads faster than a rumor in a small neighborhood, the story of Jesus and the deaf-mute might seem a bit, well, let's say unusual. After all, who nowadays spits on their hand to heal? However, diving into this biblical narrative, we find more than just evidence of a miracle. We find a message that is as current as the Polish news agency service, but much more substantive. Let's start from the beginning. When Jesus leaves the vicinity of Tyre, he doesn't head straight to his destination. The Messiah decides on a little detour through Sidon, returns to the Sea of Galilee, and finally reaches the pagan Decapolis. It's like traveling from Krakow to Warsaw via Wrocław. Not the shortest route, right? But Jesus' journey wasn't about saving time. It was about meeting people where they are. This is the first lesson for us. God's path is not always the simplest, but it always leads to the goal. Next, when people bring the deaf-mute to him, Jesus doesn't put on a big show. He doesn't deliver long sermons or organize a public spectacle. Instead, he takes the man aside. In this personal, intimate moment, Jesus spits on his hand and touches the mute's tongue. For the modern person, this might sound, disgusting. But let's pause for a moment. Don't we sometimes deal with things in our lives that seem unpleasant but are necessary for healing? Ephphatha, which means be opened. This word that Jesus speaks is a powerful call not only to the deaf-mute of that time. It's a call to all of us. Let's open our ears to hear the needs of others. Let's open our mouths to speak words of truth and comfort, not gossip and criticism. In today's world full of noise and chaos, we might need this Ephphatha more than ever. And what happens when Jesus asks not to spread the word about what happened? People do exactly the opposite. Well, some things never change. When we experience something good, the natural reaction is to share it with others. And perhaps there's a message in that for us too. Even if Jesus asked for silence, the kindness and love that spread through good deeds are too great to keep to ourselves. Let's consider what this story says about our modern times. It's not just a tale of divine power's manifestation. In a world where the chase for sensation and novelty dominates, the story of Jesus, who heals in silence and humility, reminds us that true power doesn't lie in spectacle, but in the simplicity of authentic human gestures. So when the world screams, let's remember the power of the quiet Ephphatha. Let that be our message. In times when everyone wants to be heard, perhaps the most revolutionary act is to learn to listen. And when we understand that, we'll discover that we don't need technological miracles to change the world. We only need open hearts, ears, and a restrained tongue.